definition of al-hikmah, the wisdom. One definition is certain ayat, certain verses came in different chapters in the Quran. I think in the Al-Isra, there is description of certain things that's part of the wisdom. It's not the whole wisdom, but part of it. And in other ayat, other verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this is also part of hikmah. Also, hikmah, if we look at it, it came with other messengers, Sayyidina Ibrahim and Sayyidina Isa Christ and Sayyidina Musa. So hikmah was actually
في ناس كذا دارسة.
sister, are you saying something? Sister Amina? Okay, so I think that if if the brothers and sisters want to talk about this, I think I will open the discussion. I'm not prepared to do anything, but I think this is a major major topic to talk about.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. This is Brother Muhammad.
Um,
This is really great point and a great point of discussion. And Surah Al Imran is one of the best places, and especially when I personally look at the ayahs, theories that we went through. قل إن كنتم تحبون الله فاتبعوني يحبكم الله ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم والله غفور رحيم قل أطيعوا الله والرسول فإن تولوا فإن الله لا يحب الكافرين إن الله اصطفى آدم ونوحا, and it follows here. So from here, it's like I really think that Dr. Anushi went through this, and I really think that this is a good start to just go back into those areas and just try to understand them a little bit better. Because I believe, and this is my take on this, and again, it's like my interpretation and my understanding. It's like, as you mentioned, the Surah Al-Imran is divided, and this is like the introduction of like what is different about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and how the examples follow of the selection of the other prophets. And this takes us into the tribal. It's like the first ayah in the first ayah here. إن الله اصطفى آدم ونوح وآل إبراهيم وآل عمران على العالمين. This is more like all of these. Somehow there is a relation between them, and there is a relation. There is that tribal, and that there is that belief in those people that they have to be relatives. But there was a good reason. So this where the start of that ayah started, to talk about what is different about Islam and Muslims and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The other thing that I look at here that is relative is like how the ayahs follow the ayah 35, and it goes all the way to where we finished that halaqah, and it talks about the hikmah and the wisdom. Ayah 48. It's like if you follow these ayahs, you feel like there is a built-in like the stories are built from each other, or somehow there is deep feelings or deep and rich information that we try to get from here. So if you look at ayah 35, for example, it talks about Imra'atu Imran, and it talks about like the females, and she's offering a female, but and here where God responds is like there is no difference between male and female, and it goes and it goes into like preparing us to what to expect from Maryam alayhi salam by the conversation between Zakaria and Maryam. It's like Zakaria was offering her food, was taking care of her. He knew what he was bringing home, and all of a sudden he was coming in, and she has her own risk, her own food, her own whatever things that God gave her. So it's like just to preparing us of like how to to believe. It's like this is a way to start thinking about like leaving everything and believing in God, and how when you believe in God you will gain whatever you wish for. When you leave your beliefs with God, and don't look at materialistic things, how you can gain them with the power of God. And it keeps, and I'm sorry, and the stories keeps going into like Zachariah asking God for having a child before even married, or before the story of Mary. So here is like we have Maryam having a child, and Yahya having a child, and Zachariah having a child, and there is similarities in those stories. And this is another thing that maybe we should even talk a little bit more about, because having, it's like it was more examples of having those people accept. And where I'm going with this is like people then, until the time of Prophet Muhammad, people until that point, they were looking at things that they can touch and see. And the word is the wisdom that we're talking about, and the hikmah here is allowing people to think. And that's what I noticed happening in the last 3-4 halqas. People start asking questions, and and I'm talking about the group here, people start asking real good questions about like what we need to do and what's supposed to happen. And people need to start reading those ayahs, and this is what we need to start like, who's Yahya? And Yahya, did he die?
This
There
is
is nothing.
yeah. So, thank you, brother. Jazakallah khair. If I can interject, you bring up the topic about reading the Quran and understanding it. That's a really good point. What Dr. Ghanouchi has been saying for the last 4 or 5 lectures that you mentioned, we've been concentrating on the Surah Ali Imran, which is good. So if I can just do an intro to the people, we have some new people that joined us today. What I want to do is give an intro to the approach that we've been taking, because those that join on a regular basis understand what we are doing, but the new people do not. So Dr. Ghanouchi is always encouraging the original version of Islam, which was taught by Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and a small group of people who came from very harsh conditions, the desert, the heat, were able to conquer and spread the Islam across the world, and in very little time. Now, they were not superhumans. They just understood the religion well and the mission. So when they read the Quran, they read it for understanding. And we have many occasions where Sahaba would would want to basically understand and read a new verse before they moved to the next one. This is how they were going about it. So small group of people did a lot when compared to us today as Muslims, 1.2 billion, and very ineffective. So the Muslims today do not have an understanding of Islam, the version of Islam that was given to us by our parents, the version of Islam that is taught that is lectured by imams, traditional imams, I should say, in masjids, in mosques. It is not the real version. It's basically a rehash of old lectures, and nothing new, nothing inspiring. I personally do not find the messages that I hear in Friday prayers very inspiring. They're just storytelling. There's no talk about the mission. There's no talk about establishing justice, freedom, liberty, doing ihsan, building the community around me. There's nothing that is to that effect. And the reason we don't have that, goes back to history, and the way the version of Islam, the wrong version of Islam was created and given to us. So some of the reasons why we have the wrong version of Islam is because the rulers at that time did not want the scholars to concentrate on research on freedom, research on liberty, and what happens when you take liberty away, what happens when you take freedom away, what happens when you go from democratic system, which Islam encourages and promotes, to something that is passed from one family to another and to another, just like Brother Muhammad said, just like you said, it was Bani Umayyah, then it became Al-Abbasiyun, so and so on. So that is, we go back to those rulers, and they squashed any attempt to for scholars to research into the fundamental and objectives of Islam. So they told them, okay, you just concentrate on wudu. That's why we have so many books on wudu, which is really a simple thing. And it's whenever a researcher or a scholar wanted to do research on freedom, liberty, ihsan, amar, they were persecuted, and we know of many scholars that were killed, martyred. So that's and that carries on till today. That version of Islam carries on to today, where there's focus on, tajweed is good, but it's not really, you're not going to understand Islam if you master tajweed. Memorization is good, but you're not going to really understand. I know a lot of people that have the Quran memorized, and they know their character is nothing, Islamic. They don't know anything about. They really don't know what the mission is. They're just basically robots, and that's why we're ineffective. 1.2 billion, and we're ineffective. So with reading the Quran and understanding it and going back to the original version, that is what we need today. We can all start doing that by, just read one verse a week and understand it, see how it applies, and keep in mind that Islam is more than just, prayer and fasting. No, it's a mission. It's a life mission. And every prophet had that mission, and they followed that mission. And since Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is our role model, we have to carry on that mission. So reading the Quran, understanding it, how it applies, is key to basically changing the condition of the Muslims. And when you understand the Quran, you'll see where the culture, where some things that you might think are Islamic are not really Islamic.
Let's open the discussion, Brother
Jazakallah
Islam.
khair. If I can just, make a comment about the tribal system. I think this is a very good point that everybody is bringing it and talking about it, because people kind of tend to say, okay, looking for that, as we talked about last week, that everybody's looking for that savior. We're looking for that somebody who's coming down to us, who's teaching us our religion. And then people, the easiest way is to go to this families, and they say, okay, I have blood connecting to the Prophet Muhammad, or I'm from the Ahl al-Bayt, or I'm Al Umayyah, or whatever. But I mean, we have two ayahs in the Quran that we read, and it's talking specifically to this. And number one is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said to Ibrahim, Inni ja'iluka linnasi imaman. فإبراهيم replied, he said, ومن ذريتي. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, لا ينال عهدي الظالمين. So basically, Ibrahim made a dua to keep it in his family. And Allah said, لا ينال عهدي الظالمين, which indicated some people from the descendants of Ibrahim that they could be ظالمين. Another verse that I was reading yesterday in Surah Al-Hadid, and he said, ayat 26, وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا نُوحًا وَإِبْرَاهِيمَ وَجَعَلْنَا فِي ذُرِّيَّتِهِمَا النُّبُوَّةَ وَالْكِتَابَ فَمِنْهُمْ مُهْتَدٍ وَكَثِيرٌ مِنْهُمْ فَاسِقُونَ. So if we can imagine that there are people.
Can you translate, please?
Sorry? Yeah. So it says, this is what we sent Nuhan and Ibrahim, and from their descendants, we made them prophet, and we send them the books. Some of them are on the right path, but a lot of them are misleaded or misguided or, not on the right path. So it's telling us that even the people who are dissident or even Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad, all people from the Al-Bayt, they're not all pure blood. They're not all like we can assume right away that they're going to be just and wise and prophet leaders. And this is, I think this is the big wisdom that Allah left us with when Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was given the message that he did not give him a very specific way of how the Muslim should be led or who is the Khalifa or what's the characteristic of a Khalifa, because it's left basically, as Brother Hamid mentioned about al-hikmah, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give hikmah to some people, but when he chooses them, he gives them يعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة. Al-hikmah is how to put the right thing or the right person in the right place or choosing the right decision. So basically, al-hikmah is a proper decision making, which cannot be dictated by the Quran. It is just can be taught. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he chooses the prophets, he will teach them al-hikmah, how to make the decision. Or the alternatively is, as a Muslim, and as one of the other brothers was mentioning, that when we're reading the Quran and we're learning about our religion, we are seeking the hikmah. وَالْحِكْمَةُ ضَالَةُ الْمُؤْمِنِ. It could be in the Quran, it could be in the Sunnah, it could be in science, it could be in experience, but we just have to seek the hikmah and then learn it and then apply it. And that's, I think, not to go look for the bloodlines, not to go look for Khalifa in some secret place, or Wallahu Alam. I think, as the brothers mentioned, I think the hikmah is what we really need to seek, and knowledge and learning about this religion and what our message in this dunya. Wallahu Alam.
I think Jazakallah khair. That's exactly. I think I agree with you on that. Anybody wants to add anything before? I think that, yeah, there is what happened. There's like a conflict between the Islamic major concepts like shura. Shura is, in our time, shura is democracy. It's like people are equal. Nobody has the right to be, or nobody better than the others because he is blood related, or because he's rich, or because he's whatever it is, his origin or ethnicity. No, everybody is equal in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even Rasulullah, there is an ayah said, if you don't do your message, or if you don't carry the mission you are supposed to do, we will take you and somebody else will. Imagine this was sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the messenger. So the measure or how we look at things, it's not because of you are rich or poor, or you are from Arab origin, or from European, or you are white or black. No, everybody is equal. And because of that, I mean, that's justice. That's what Islam, there's a major ayat in Quran talking about justice, al-adl. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, no, la yadlimu an-nas, yani حرمت الظلم على نفسي. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not be unfair or unjust to anybody. So, and ask us to be fair to each other. That's in one of the hadith. So there is a major concepts or major, or we can call them the overarching goals of Islam, which is justice, equality, shura or democracy. I mean, you can say them in different way. Also, improvement the life, betterment the life for everybody. I mean, you can, if I forget anything, you can just say it, brothers. So that's what the major concept of Islam. What happened, it was changed. It was changed by the reality. Sometimes you give your good message or mission, but because of maybe the reality sometimes is different, there is people with their own hidden intention. They want to change it. They want to be in the picture, and others. So they change that by changing the definition. For example, of hikmah, as Muhammad Iqbal, he's a big scientist and actually poet, and he was, I mean, he lived in the past century, in the 19th century, and he said the overarching goals of Islam stayed stayed minimum, did not grow. And because of that, because of the reality, we have tribal society that's could not accept that changes. Because before we used to have slaves and masters and slaves. So how come this master will accept that slave will be equal to him? So that's a major thing. That's actually changed a lot of, or hid some major concepts of Islam because of that, because they did not accept the slaves or the people coming out of Arabia or out of Quraysh, the major tribe, and they want to do something, be the rulers. Oh no, can't be. So that's one of the major turning point that happened in Islam. Of course, others, it was I mean, when we mention scholars these days, we should mention Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa has a school of thought, has a methodology how to accept hadith, but it was just it was hidden. Nobody knew about this. We know Abu Hanifa is a major one of the, I mean, four school of thoughts, the major school of thoughts of Islam, but his way of, or his method, is actually not known to everybody. Abu Hanifa, if we compare him to Al-Shafi'i made the riwayah or ahadith school very strong. And there's nothing wrong with that unless somebody will come and change. I mean, through the ahadith, they made different sets of overarching goals. So they justify for the governors, for the Khalifa, or for the Wula, or whatever it is, they justify for them to kill anybody with a small reason. And if you know, if you go back to the history, you will see the bloodshed and the fighting between Muslims right after the first 30 years. So that change, that I'm not the one who will say don't take hadith. No, we'll take hadith. But there was a window where some people tried to play with it. Also, when Muslims saw that fighting, they were questioning what's happening. What happened? Why this happened? Why people are killing each other? And the answer was, it's just accept it. It's from Allah. You have no choice. So the idea of jabr, or obligation, and you have no choice in life, came to reality, and people start believing in that. So that was one of the major factors that affected people until today. That's why you see inefficiency in life. We are, I mean, instead of doing the maximum, like وَجَاهِدُوا فِي اللَّهِ حَقَّ جِهَادِهِ, do your maximum. When you do something, pay your maximum effort and try to make it the best. That's what ihsan is. Ihsan is to make the best in everything. When you do ibadah, when you worship to the maximum, or the best. Be close to Allah if you can, to the maximum of your ibadah. Also, if you are engineer, or if you're a doctor, if you are a scientist, you have to work to the to the maximum for the betterment of other people. So there is, I mean, changes that happened through this dangerous adoption of the word of hikmah, or the wisdom. They made hikmah only the sunnah. And when the sunnah came, as I mentioned, Abu Hanifa Nu'man, Abu Hanifa said, or his methodology, he could not take any hadith. He has a really very strict rule of taking hadith. He said the narrator has to be faqih. Faqih mean like a scholar. I can't take from any narrator or any, one just because he's a companion. Companion is good, but that's not enough. On the other hand, the other school said, okay, if he's a companion, then he is perfect. He doesn't lie, and that's enough for us to take the hadith. And we don't know. I mean, there was 600 piece of hadith or sayings of Rasulullah. Imam al-Bukhari made them about 3,000 or 6,000 or something. Look at the number. Went from 600,000 to only 6,000. So there is a big problem in there, because people, I mean, rulers played their rules, and
Excuse me, brother.
Yes,
This is Muhammad. I just noticed something, and I meant to talk to Dr. Ghanouchi about this a couple of halqas ago. And my notice about or a comment about what you're saying. I really think, or we need to start thinking of the hadith as and the scholars who collected the hadith as collectors of hadith. They put the rules to collect the hadith. The hadith was there, and the stories of the hadith was written, even that there is some hadiths in the beginning of Islam that tells us that the Prophet Muhammad didn't ask people to write hadith. It was because I believe he was worried that they're gonna start mixing things in the beginning, and the religion and the Quran wasn't as complete. So let's take that as a start. And after the completion of the religion and the completion of Quran, he was encouraging people to collect the hadith and start writing and teaching it to each other. There was Suhaf during the life of Prophet Muhammad and scholars who collected hadith. The Imams that we're talking about, they just put the rules and implemented their own rules for the hadith. The number of the hadith, it's like al-hadith al-sahih, the numbers of them is limited. The issue is like what you're talking about, in the way I understand it, and the way I've been trying to research to understand it, is that different scholars, it's like somebody from Yemen, for example, gave a hadith, and they have the people who narrated the hadith. And we had somebody from Bilad al-Sham doing the same thing. And this is where the number of the hadith start getting bigger and bigger. But the hadith itself, it's the same. And the number of the Sahih hadith is limited. It's in the hundreds, not, or maybe less, but it's not in the thousands. The thousands is just more like different people, different groups from different regions collected the hadith and narrated it. This is just the comment I had for this.
You are correct. I don't argue about that, and I'm not against writing hadith. No, I mean, there is some schools that we don't want hadith at all, but that's, in my opinion, is unfair. But the problem is not the hadith itself, but how they did use it with, or they played through the hadith. You know, there is something called hukm al-mutaghallib, which is if there is somebody took over the government, and instead of fighting that guy, they used hadith. I don't know how it came, but they used it to justify that. And we have a sector in fiqh in our schools of thought, how to accept and be just accept that, and don't argue with, don't be repellent to it. You have to accept and you have to follow. But that's not true. I mean, we should not follow because this guy, he came and he took over. We should, I mean, this is what they use today. I mean, when in Egypt, what we have about 7 years ago, it's the same mentality. And we have scholars who justified it. said, okay, حكم المتغلب, or the stronger, or the one who, the defeater, or something. I don't know the exact translation, but that's a problem in our mentality, in how we understand hadith. But on the other hand, Abu Hanif al-Nu'man, he has his stricter rule of taking hadith, because there's two schools: the schools of muhaddithin and schools of fuqaha, scholars. So Abu Hanifa is a scholar, is not a muhaddith, and he has a stricter rule than the other school, the school of sayings of hadith. And we don't sometimes these days, when people talk about hadith, they don't look at the schools of thoughts like Abu Hanifa, or even Abu Ali al-Jabali. Abu Ali al-Jabali, he is a very strong scholar, but lots of us don't know about him. We have the big schools of thought, the Al-Mu'tazila, or Al-Ibadiyya, or other schools of thoughts. They are hidden. We don't hear about them. But at the rise time, when the civilization were high, these people were very effective, and they put a lot of new thoughts and books. Some of them wrote maybe hundreds of books, but we don't know about them. So what happened these days, I mean, why we're trying to see what happened to Islam. And Dr. Ghannouchi always say, we have a version that's corrupted of Islam. And that's true, because if you look at us, we are inefficient. We cannot solve any problem. We cannot actually face our challenges. Look at the current history. We are going from one problem to a bigger problem. And I think that's because we are not going back to the clear source of Islam. Wallah.
Jazakallah khair. Any like suggestions on like a reliable online hadith source, or like a book that would be considered as yani, because I mean, I think this issue, I mean, we have the Quran as like a single source, but when it comes to hadith, I mean, especially like if you want to look at specific topic or specific hadith that you don't remember, where is there like any guys you can like recommend in that regard?
The schools are, just sorry if there's anybody want to talk, but there is some muhaddithin, they are still living, but we have different schools. We have a school that has a lot of money, and the other school doesn't have money. So the books are the same books, but sometimes even if a hadith is narrated in the book of Sahih al-Bukhari or Fath al-Bari, or that doesn't mean that if that hadith contradict al-Quran, what you do. If it contradicts reality, what you do, contradicts science, and some of them do. So it was written in a different frame, different reference frame. Now we are living in different, I mean, after 1400 years, how you look at it. If you say this hadith can't be true, or this hadith is wrong, are you out of Islam? That's a big question. And there's actually, if you know, some scholars like, I forgot his name. He's in Jordan, and he is good in tafsir. I will try to look him up and maybe write it in the comments. And there is a Sakaf, another scholar in ahadith in Jordan, but because they are not with the Salafi school, they are not that well known. You have to dig a little bit more to see them, and to hear them, and to see what they're saying. Even in Saudi, there is different schools, like Sheikh Hatim al-Auni. He's from the Salafi, but he's different. He's kind of mujaddid, or renewal, or something. He's reformer. And there is, but you need to do some search. That's the issue with the hadith. I mean, there is sometimes some contradictions. Allah.
Assalamu alaikum. Shukran,
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Brother Ahmed, for taking over the discussion today.
I'm trying hard. It's very hard job to do.
MashaAllah, no, you are doing really wonderful. Jazakallah khair. On concerning hadith, it's really bothering, especially when we look at some of the issues that the scholars have spoken about women. And one particular topic I had a discussion was on the observation of Ada. I have a family who's observing Ada, and she's told she's not supposed to get out of the house during that period. And yeah, she has to stay in her home. She can only get out in case of life and death. Like, so even if you're working, unless like you have no other option, but if there's someone who can provide for you, then you are not required to get out. So I had a discussion with one of the students concerning this, and he said, yeah, there are a lot of proofs. I said, which proof? Yes, from the Quran. Which ayah? And he said, Quran says that women should stay indoors, and scholars have argued that this also goes to women who are in Ada. I said, but when we look at some of the hadith, the women complained to the Prophet, and the Prophet said, you can go work, you can visit, I mean, you can get out of your house. It's not, I don't think like that's how it should be interpreted. And yeah, we had an argument, and it was like, you know, you're being stubborn, you're that's the American way of thinking, you know. People have studied this, and you're not supposed to argue. You don't know the impact of how women who do not observe Ada end up mad, end up cast, you know, stuff like that. So it was just, and unfortunately women have taken this to be the case. So like, if you start to question, you are subjected to be maybe trying to, you know, how do I say, what the word, like, to kind of getting people out of the
As you're
correct Islam.
rejecting, yeah, yes.
Yeah, rejecting the correct way. So yeah, it's really a big issue, and unfortunately, like you said, I don't know where exactly how we can deal with this, but my point is also about, you know, a lot of time Dr. Ganushi has enlightened us about this, the importance of rediscovering and our religion, and, you know, embracing this vision of our deen and the mission. So, but I think, you know, these issues are deeply rooted in our mentality, in our societies. It's very hard to change, like you say, a lot of time we say. And then in the end also, it's easier to see, you know, to point fingers on others. So, and we need to reclaim this message of Rahma, this message of empowerment. I think as we are heading to Ramadan, maybe it's time we take like 3-week course to polish, to go over again deeply on the issue of the concept of tazkiyah to nafsi, how we kind of in ourselves, like how we get to learn and rediscover our deen and our personalities, and where we go wrong, and how we can change this, and how we can approach in a way that is like just the way the Prophet ﷺ has implemented this deen, and in terms of our families, and also in terms of our societies and as leaders. So like, we need a whole, my view, we need maybe 1 month, or at least 2 or 3 sessions to kind of ponder and just, you know, concentrate, because a lot of time we go forth and back on, you know, pointing again and again, and we know where the problem is, but we need to go forward, because time is going, Ramadan is coming, maybe we have to get the best out of it. It's a great opportunity. And also, our time is moving and we don't know, any day our scholars are dying, we are also heading there. So I think it's important that we have a lesson on leadership.
True, true. Jazakallah khair. I think there is, I'm not a scholar to answer about the idda, but I think the issue of halal and haram should be restricted to the major ayat. I know there is sometimes people will add from their culture, from their understanding, from their environment, because at one time the environment was maybe very women life were restricted. Even recently in some countries people prevented women from driving a car. So I mean that affects sometimes the ruling, but I think halal or haram is not an easy thing to do. It should be restricted. Also, we have to go back to the concept of al-ayat al-muhkamat, the contextual ayat, and the very clear ayat. So some issues can be just mutashabihat. I mean, it was correct in this time, but maybe life changed and it can be changed, which is I cannot say that because I'm not a scholar. But
Brother Muhammad, regarding the idda, from my understanding, is it's 3 months where a recently divorced sister or Muslim woman cannot remarry. That is the only restriction that I know of. To say that she cannot go to work, to say that she cannot, she's a teacher, she's a doctor, she's a nurse, that is, nowhere in Islam. So I think that is a misconception. People misunderstanding, interjecting their rules, cultural rules, mixing them with Islam. But it's not practical. So I think that it's nowhere in the religion, because anything that is not practical is against the religion. So if, say, a doctor is divorced and she cannot go to work, or a nurse for 3 months, that doesn't make any sense. So I think that is a wrong understanding of iddah.
True. I mean, yes, I mean, you can say that, but because ijtihad was stopped for a long time, so people will just took and freeze that copy of Islam that was good in like 1,000 years ago and apply it today, and that will create a lot of contradictions and problems because life changes. And now you can travel. I'm not talking about idda in particular, but like women travel from one place to another. At that time, it wasn't safe. Now you can travel from anywhere in the world and it's safe, unless you are in certain areas, which is just if there's a war or something. But
There's another, go ahead.
yeah, I wanted to say that was Ahmed Nofal. He has PhD in tafsir, in explanation of Quran, and he has his rule in how to take a hadith for the brothers, just if they want to benefit from looking at him and see what.
Yeah, we can look at it. If you could play it. I want to say something regarding what Sister Amina said about the response she got when she questioned the concept, or what people were saying about iddah. So it's always tough to say the truth and to be basically different from others. And the ayah that comes to mind is from Surah Luqman. Luqman is giving advice to his son, and he says, "Ya bunay, aqim as-salah wa'mur bil ma'ruf wa nahy 'anil munkar wasbir 'ala ma asabaka. Inna dhalika min 'azm al-umur." Basically, what Luqman is telling his son is to establish prayer, promote what is good, and try to stop what is evil, and then be patient. Also have patience على ما أصابك, for what will happen to you. So because Luqman is a wise man, and he knows that people that will promote good will have to be patient, because they're going to be attacked. They're going to be attacked, and someone is going to say, "Oh, this is the American understanding of Islam," or "Oh, you're a feminist," or so on and so forth. So, or "Oh, you're not, you don't believe in the Sunnah," or whatever people come up with. Or you're a Shia or whatever. So anybody that is today, and it's I guess it's been a fact throughout life, throughout history. You promote what is good, you're going to be attacked. So therefore, be patient. Don't let what you hear discourage you. Just keep on moving and doing good.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, there's, some people will be just very limited, and they just take the exact text and do not explain or why it was said, or what we call it, the maqsad, or the reason behind. And others will go, okay, it was said in that situations and in that environment, and they can apply it or understand it in different way and give different answer or different opinion. And that's a problem between every religion. You have different schools, because some people will just be very conservative, and they cannot understand the change of time or change of age, and others will be life is changing, and you have to apply the reality, the changing reality, and to understand what's the reason behind every single ruling. Wallahu a'lam. Anybody wants to add or comment? So this is Sheikh Ahmed Nawfal. He is very well known in Jordan for Brother Assam. Yeah, you can maybe look him up and see his rules or his methodology in accepting hadith, especially because he's talking about Quran. He was, explaining some ayat or some surah in the Quran. He has, I think, full tafsir of the Quran, but there is a lot of videos which makes things easy, and you can see how what's his methodology of accepting hadith. His first thing is Quran. Even if the hadith is sahih, whatever it is, it can't contradict Quran. That's what he says, and I think that's a good strategy.
Jazakallah khair. Jazakallah khair. And then also comments about the fatwas, and when the fatwa does not make sense or contradict with really like practicality. I think there is a hadith that I always find like useful, is the hadith that I don't remember the exact wording, but one of the Sahaba, he asked Prophet Muhammad عن الإثم والبر. He was asking, what's the ithm and what's the bir? And then Prophet Muhammad, he said, الإثم ما حاك في صدرك وكرهت أن يطلع عليه الآخرين. And then he continues to say at the end, استفتي قلبك ولو أفتوك. Yani, our religion is about purifying our heart and really connected to the Quran. And once you're up to that level, you can, like, if something that feels that you have something inside you that it will tell you it's not right, then you will have a way of understanding is if this is something, when if it's ithm or bir. I found this like useful sometimes when I'm struggling with making a decision. But wallahu a'lam, yani, this might be helpful, especially when it comes to the iddah, and if it's really restrictive and it does not make any sense, and a lady is leaving her house to take care of her stuff and nobody else is able to helping her, I mean, I don't think anybody would disagree that this is something that is necessary, and there's really nothing wrong by doing that. I mean, when people say this is haram, what are they basing it on? I mean, there's nothing, you know, that is haram about that. Allahu alam.
True.
السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله. تفضل.
مساء الخيرات. How are you?
الحمد لله.
Mashallah, it's an interesting discussion today. So what is Sheikh Aghnouchi today?
He's out of town. He's not
Oh,
available.
But discussion is really interesting. I was with you all from the beginning. So just I missed maybe a point about when you're talking about the Iddah, what's the problem with it? So you mentioned something like,
Sister Amina said there's a question came where for a woman cannot leave the house during that time. And sometimes it's necessary to go for shopping or to visit a doctor, or if you have a job. I mean, in America, if you have a job, I don't think there is 60 days or 90 days or something. The job will not give you PTO or pay time off for that time. I don't know. So,
subhanallah.
what do you think?
So, I want to add something like always I'm praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, say alhamdulillah, we have the Quran is saved. So the main thing that we have a Quran. So I required myself and required all my brothers and sisters to spend more time in understanding Quran more. So put the effort to understand Arabic and make effort to understand exactly the circumstances in في نزول بعض الآيات مثلا. So those things makes your understanding much clearer. And the last point, Brother Isam, he mentioned that every single of us has this this logical, or let's say this sensitive balance in our mind, that we can recognize exactly what's the fault, what's is fault, and what's is good things, and which is bad. That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in Surah Al-Anfal, إن تتقوا الله يجعل لكم فرقانا ويكفر عنكم سيئاتكم. Furqan, which means he makes you like your understanding and understanding to recognize exactly what's false and what's true. So in Islam, so in overall in this, but the things that it supports your opinion or support your what's called your choice or your decision to make this or to avoid this. So to always refer yourself to the Quran. So especially with the clear ayat, So when I reach the Iddah, so this one is actually is exclusive for fuqaha more. But the things that we have to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he mentioned something really detailed, really detailed, وَأَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ وَهُوَ اللَّطِيفُ الْخَبِيرُ. He knows exactly why he said this and that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he said ثلاثة قروء, it's not ثلاثة أشهر. ثلاثة أشهر for واللاتي لم يحضن, يعني الميؤوس, what we call it, omnipause, I think. The woman has passed like 50 years old or something like that. This is for ثلاثة أشهر. But ثلاثة قروء, which means طهور أو حيضات. So ثلاثة قروء, it could be, but also in other places. Surah Al-Baqarah, already Sheikh Aghnouchi he talked about this, is أربعة أشهر وعشرة. أربعة أشهر وعشرة. So also the ظروف in Medina, or ظروف or قبيلة in that time maybe it's not the same. That's why we need fatwa. So we need discussion. We need research more. So we need to it's not to كما نقول so نفصل الدين على مقاسنا, but we have to understand first. So we understand why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this point he said. But we have to be careful in this situation. We have to be careful because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he mentioned something like exactly, so صيام ثلاثة أشهر, صيام شهرين متتابعين. Cannot say you cannot make it like shahr and then break down, take a pause and make a break and then continue the other shahr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he mentioned something like exactly with a number, so we have to be careful in this. Wallahu a'lam. So especially when he mentioned in Quran, like with details. Allahu A'lam, barakallahu feekum. But the discussion is really important and really, because when you spending a lot of time to understand the Quran, to understand the word, the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he keeps you away from distracting. When you distract with this firqa or other firqa or this sheikh or other sheikh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he mentioned something in Quran really clear, is really helpful. So is the best choice, decision to choose.
That's
Allah.
true, brother Ismail. You mentioned basically Siyam or Shahrain. What happens is nowadays is you have people, Muslims, and even so-called imams that would say, oh well, they apply to anything they want. They say, okay, well, somebody with diabetes that missed Ramadan should do 2 months of fasting. So what I think it's really simple to understand the rules, because Islam is, the Quran is clear. So the question was, can a woman leave the house during her iddah? There's nothing in the Quran that says she can't. What is said is that she cannot remarry. So where did these scholars come up with this?
He mentioned something. اسكنوهن من حيث سكنتم من وجدكم ولا يخرجن من بيوتهن يا أيها النبي إذا طلقتم النساء فطلقوهن لعدتهن وأحصوا العدة واتقوا الله لا تخرجوهن من بيوتهن ولا يخرجن إلا أن يأتين بفاحشة مبينة.
Yes,
that's the ayah I was given.
this does not apply to iddah. This is basically to give them housing. Basically, do not let them do not make them homeless, or do not ask them to.
Don't kick them out from
Yes.
their houses.
No, listen, brother Ayman, in this point I told you. So this one is exclusively for fuqaha first. So it's much better to discuss with faqih.
I disagree. Not everything should go back to the fuqaha. It's very simple to understand, brother.
So if you go to Surah Al-Baqarah, it's something else also. So when he's talking about the married and remarried a woman, so he mentioned أربعة أشهر وعشرة فإذا بلغن أجلهن فأمسكوهن بمعروف وبعدين بعد ذلك ولا جناح عليكم فيما عرضتم به من خطبة النساء وأكننتم في أنفسكم. So this you know exactly what's the meaning of this, because a woman when he maybe when she want to go outside or something like that, or somebody he want to engage with her and marry her again, and in this moment they will not allow to be married, or he missed the choice, he missed the what's called the chance to get married with her. So ولا جناح عليكم فيما عرضتم به من خطبة النساء وأكننتم في أنفسكم علم الله أنكم ستذكرونهن ولكن لا توعدوهن سرا. عرضتم معارض. So we just نسميه المعارض من القول. It's not clear declaration or clear demand. It's like just the hint. You make the hint.
Yeah, hints or implication.
Yeah. So in this point, that's why I told you have to be careful in this. So yeah. So you need somebody he knows exactly the topic and subject of all that. Wallahu a'lam. So I don't like to engage a lot in this.
No, I mean there is usually several schools of thoughts of Islam. Of course, the roof is the Quran. I mean the Quran and the clear application of Rasulullah. If he did this or that in a clear way, not just because sometimes you will see very weak narration here or there. And some madhab take that. I mean, there is lots of examples where you have differences, major differences, but on the other way, there is no differences. If it's a clear cut in the Quran, then you have no differences. But just for knowledge, there is a school of thought of Al-Mu'tazila when they said Al-Hasanu ma hassanahu al-aql. So they made al-aql the ruler. I mean, your intellect. And on the other side, there is the other school of thought, which is no, al-hasanu ma hasanahu al-shara'. Of course, when you say al-aql, that doesn't mean you put the Quran on the side. No, it's under the Quran. So if you look at al-idda, maybe you can analyze it and think about it and see what's the situations, what's the environment. It was in, I mean, you have to do a study. And I don't think al-fuqaha, anybody can be faqih if you study it well and you give it the right time and right, if you have right resources. But the problem sometimes, if you go to an imam or to a sheikh, and he will go to an old book that was written 1,000 years ago or 500 years ago, and that he just read from that book and give you the ruling. I think that's a problem, because at that time, maybe that sheikh was following certain way of thinking, or the environment was different. So you cannot apply that to today. I mean, if you go to the maqasid, or the meanings, or the general overarching goals of Islam, I think that can control which way you go. So, I mean, that's, of course, al-idda is something very specific, and it needs somebody with knowledge to understand it and give the saying about that. Maybe we can ask Dr. Sohail about it next time.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you, Jazakallah khair. You raise a very important topic here. I think the problem we have is we've made Islam like canonical. It's written this way, so follow it. Don't question, like you said, that ijtihad has been undermined. So we have to take what the scholars have said, stop questioning, stop being, stubborn. These people have studied the religion, they are well known, they are hafid, so you have to take their way, or else you go to the other way is a misleading way. So yeah, unfortunately that's.
I have an example. I don't want to interrupt you, sister, but I remember when I was back home, I was young, and we have an issue where it's not the marriage or divorce. No, it's different. We have in that village, people used to go to one masjid, one mosque for the Jummah, for the Friday session, Friday prayer. And the masjid became, so tight. People could, I mean, you cannot have everybody in that masjid. So the question came, can we go to another masjid? So we have two Jummah in the same village, two prayers in different, different buildings and far from each other. So I was at that time very, limited in my knowledge, and I was with the opinion, no, you have to be only in one. You cannot have several masjids or several Jummah, several prayers. You have to be in one. And we went back to the books, and it happened in Baghdad maybe 1,000 years ago. And they said it's forbidden to have several prayers in the same town, even if people pray on top of each other, like on the backs of each other. Look at how restricted people, and I'm talking about myself, and I was with that and said, no, it's forbidden. You cannot do this. But actually, with these days, we have several prayers in the same day, in the same mosque, in the same building, because you cannot handle all of these numbers. It will be very, unbearable. It's very difficult. There's no difficulty in Islam. So I think when there is difficulty, that's a rule for myself. When people ask me about things, I said, no, I mean, there is no difficulty in religion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it easy. So when you worship, you don't put yourself in danger. I saw in a video a brother praying in the highway. He stopped his car in the middle of the highway and he prayed in the highway. That's very, very unacceptable, dangerous. You cannot bother people by stop a car in the middle of the highway. I'm not talking about the shoulder, no, in the highway, in the lane, in the travel lane. He stopped his car and he went in front of his car and prayed. that's not what prayer should be, because you make it difficult for others. You expose yourself to danger, and you made yourself look like a fool or something. So I think flexibility is very a good sign of religion. Wallahu a'lam.
Brother Muhammad, this is really a good example of when we're talking about like trying to resolve issues. And what you just mentioned, it's another good example, like the talaq and the iddah and all of this. When God gave us, it's like our mind as a humans is limited. And this is where knowledge and that wisdom and the involvement of the specialist is really important. It's like there is things in the Quran that is giving, and it tells you it's 4 months and 10 days, or what you just mentioned. To go more, it's easier maybe to talk about your example about the one mosque in the village. Everybody needed to be united. We feel stronger if we are united, and divided. During that time, it was more important. Where it's like if it comes to today. You need people to be separated. You need people to be distanced from each other, and if you can get them to a mosque to pray.
Yes.
So this is really where the wisdom and the knowledge and the intelligence can play a real good role into when you deal with rules in the Quran. And interpreting those. And the other brother, and I'm sorry for not memorizing everybody's name, but when he asked to this issue needs a scholar, it's because you need somebody with knowledge. It doesn't mean that you have to take everything from the interpreter, but you need somebody with knowledge to get started with. And this is the beauty of the Quran. The Quran didn't come to be limited to one scholar or one interpretation, and this is why it came for al-alameen and the i'jaz. And the i'jaz of the Quran, it's for everybody in every time. So our interpretation to go into one mosque in one point was working good for us during that time. But this is again has nothing to do with the religion. It's just a human issue. But I'm just mentioning this because I don't want to fall into saying something wrong. At one point it was good to go into one mosque, but with the changes, with the challenges of our day, and the development and the growth of the population, it become more visible to have a second mosque and the third mosque and having multiple prayers in one mosque. And this is the beauty, and this is the approach that we need to take when we read those surahs and the rules in the Quran. Thank you.
Because reality changes. I mean, at one time you have a village with 100 people in it, but when you live in Washington D.C. with hundreds of maybe millions, or I don't know how many people, but you cannot put everybody in one place because there's no room. Also, they cannot travel. In Washington D.C., in the whole area, Metro D.C., you cannot travel to one place and leave your work, but having different. So reality sometimes. That's why I like what you said, knowledge. There is difference between knowledge and information. If you come to me and I'll just go to a book written by maybe a good scholar at that time and maybe a great scholar, but if I just open the book and read that, that's just information. I'm just reading. But if you have knowledge, you take that understanding. Of course, you should look at if you can, to different scholars and understand why they said what they said at that time, because that helps you. Also, you can maybe apply the reality. I mean, Islam, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran in several ayat, ما جعل عليكم في الدين من حرج. So there is flexibility in Quran, and there is no difficulty in Islam. I mean,
so brother who I don't know his name. He said the father or dad's phone. I don't know who.
Muhammad.
This is Muhammad. Sorry,
Muhammad. So exactly the point that you mentioned about if you don't know something, you have to go back and make research. You have to put effort in it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so according to knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or ta'limat, instructions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, وَلَا تَقْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادَ كُلُّ أُولَئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. So this is like, this is a like clear something, declaration from the Quran. So don't engage in something you don't know. So because this is like dangerous. And also the worst things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he made it in Surah Al-A'raf with some of the big sin. ولا لا اله الا محمد رسول الله كل من حرم زينة الله التي خرج عباده وطيبات من رزقه الذين هدى والشفاء وان لا اله الا الله محمد رسول الله عليه السلام in سورة الأعراف in the 4th page. لا اله الا الله اللهم اعف عنا وعافنا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentioned that talking about something you don't know, one of the biggest thing. So one of the big sin. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so we have to be really careful about that.
No.
So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, قل من حرم زينة الله قل إنما حرم ربي قل إنما حرم ربي الفواحش ما ظهر منها وما بطن والإثم والبغي بغير الحق وأن تشركوا بالله ما لم ينزل به سلطانا وأن تقولوا على الله ما لا تعلمون. So imagine, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he puts who talking about something he doesn't know. So this is like one of the big sin. Because لأنه في الأثر زلة عالم زلة عالم زلة عالم زلة عالم. As the deviation we have to talking about the deviation of مشروع الإسلام. So since the 1st century, so because of those scholars. So because of that, those rulers that push those scholars to put this kind of rule to follow about Jabriya or something like that. Barakallahu fi.
Why,
there is actually
that's why the idea is that we're trying to promote is for us as individual Muslims to basically be empowered and do our own research. Because if we are always going back to the scholars who have led Muslims to where we are today, 1.2 billion who are ineffective, we cannot expect them to have the right answers. So because what they're doing is exactly what Brother Muhammad said, is they go back to a book that was written 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago. So we have to do our research, and if we keep on promoting, oh, you always have to go to the scholar, that's shooting ourselves in the foot, because that is stopping, that will stop Muslims from using their brain, doing research, and they become passive. And we end up promoting what we are trying to walk away from, which is being passive and just listening to these scholars without thinking and without questioning. So it's very dangerous. It seems like we're kind of like, I want to compare us to somebody who's addicted, right? Addicted to something, they always want to go back to it. If they're not careful, they always want to go back to it. We got to be careful, because if we're going to promote people to basically empower themselves and do their own research and question, we can't also say, just rely on the scholars. That's really it's counterproductive, and we're not really moving forward if we keep on doing that.
correct. I mean, look at the examples when in the 1st centuries, you will see in Damascus or Baghdad or something, you will see in the main masjid, main mosque, you will have several circles around these big scholars, and they have students, and these students are not just any students who finished maybe memorizing the Quran, memorizing maybe lots of hadith, memorizing books in Arabic language, and so those students were actually scholars. So you have a community full of scholars better than a community full of just people who doesn't have an idea. So doing research and having critical thinking and start questioning and start reading. I mean, that's what part of tazkiyah. Tazkiyah is not just being passive and sit in your house doing nothing. No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to, go participate, do things, help. You cannot just face problems and try to solve them. Be more helpful to yourself, to the rest of the humanity. So, I mean, in our history, we have, encouraging of learning and analyzing and have critical thinking is really actually clear in the Quran. Like the first verse is Iqra, read. Read is not just to read like a book, because at that time maybe books were not available. So people cannot read, books, because they used to go and listen to scholars, and they spent years of listening, of course not listening only, listening and learning and arguing maybe, or discussing. So today I think learning is doing more effort in learning. You don't just listen to one opinion or to one school of thought. It's better to read. I mean, when I read to or heard about Abu Ali al-Jabba'i or Abu Hudayl al-Allaf from al-Mu'tazila, which is, I don't hear in the masjid about them, because sometimes our imams are more traditional. You'll be really see how come. I mean, they are really big scholars. They were thinking of stuff that nobody mentioned in our school or in our history. I mean, not history, our life. So we should be open to learn and discuss stuff and have critical thinking. Allah.
Inshallah. Brother Muhammad, could you share the book, its name and the scholar?
Which book?
You said the last one you mentioned.
Abu Ali al-Jabba'i.
Abu Ali?
Abu Ali al-Jabba'i.
Al-Jabba'i.
You can write it down or search it in a minute.
Okay.
Do you have a electronic copy of it? You can send to us on WhatsApp.
I don't have WhatsApp active these days.
أيوة نحاول الاتصال بك ولا نجدك.
Okay, I'm trying to see if I have anything on the Google right now.
You said Jabba'i. أبو علي الجبائي PDF.
No.
Wikipedia. Has tafsir.
He has a lot of books, not only.
Yeah, I found some book for read and.
I mean, he mentioned actually, if you follow, there is a professor in astrophysics. His name Basil al-Ta'i. He also talks about Ilm al-Kalam. Ilm al-Kalam is it's like logic, and it's the schools were discussing how to prove that Allah is one, or Islam is correct or something. And Ilm al-Kalam was a great science, or a great field of, of intellectual discussion, but it went down. Now we don't hear about it. So Abu Ali al-Jabba'i was actually discussing stuff about gravity. Imagine gravity. They didn't do experiments because it wasn't available, but he talked about gravity. He talked about even the nuclear, not the nuclear, the particles and stuff in chemistry and physics. Even Al-Jahid was discussing about evolution. So we have actually great scholars. They went deep in their discussion and their field, and they came up with lots of theories. Not theories that can be, because at that time, they don't have technical means to do the experiment, but they were thinking. They did not only take what was available in other philosophies. No, they were actually going deep and trying to understand and analyze natural phenomena and other stuff. So we have a great history we can actually read and benefit from.
ما شاء الله جزاكم الله خير بارك الله
حياك
فيكم
حياك.
إن شاء الله.
Okay, I think anything else anybody wants to add?
Yes, I do. I'm a Christian, for those who don't know, and I've been coming to this group for 4 years now, about once a month, usually the last Sunday of the month. I'm going to be encouraging other people in my church, which is Good Shepherd United Methodist Church in Vienna, to pop in and join these conversations from time to time. I would encourage them to come typically on the last Sunday of the month, but they may come in at other times. The point is, we're trying to encourage people in our church to learn more about Islam and learn more about the Muslim community here in Fairfax, which is the point for doing this. And we hope eventually, when the COVID pandemic is over, that we can begin to do some things together. We did have a few things. A group of you came over to our church at one time, and you invited a group of us over to a dinner at the mosque. These are the kinds of things we would like to promote in the future. My point is, if this is the right place for our people to be coming in and interacting here, this is a class on Islam. I've certainly enjoyed it. But if this is not the place where you want Christians and others to come and enter your community, basically, then I would like to have another place. But the point is, I'm looking for places of interaction, in a place where people from our church can come in and interact with Muslims, with Islam. And as I said, I plan to continue to urge people in my congregation to visit you through Dr. Ganucci's talks. And again, if this is not where you would like us to do that, please tell us another place or show us another place.
I think this is the right place, brother, and we are welcoming you. And actually, I'm really amazed by your consistency, and I'm actually I used to see you before in Fairfax when we used to go to the place in Fairfax, and no, I think we are welcoming to everybody from Christian faith or from any faith to come and discuss. We are in a place in Washington, D.C. in America. Actually, we should be welcoming anybody to join and discuss.
Great. Well, we look forward to seeing more of you in the future.
Sure. Well, thank you for coming every time.
I'm actually joining their Sunday Bible studies whenever I get time, and it's very enlightening. I really enjoy their community and their discussion. So I'm very thankful to Hugh for their welcoming and kindness. Thank you for joining us. And yeah.
Yeah, I remember when we went to the church, it was a great discussion. Dr. Ganucci introduces, I forgot the topic at that time, but it was really a good discussion. And we enjoyed the companionship with the others from the church. And before we had a nice breakfast. And it was really great. I was looking for where to go again, but I was traveling during I think they had one about astrophysics or something.
Yeah, there were some other ones that, again, we would have a breakfast every month and we would invite different people to speak and so forth. And so Dr. Ganucci and a group of you came over to at the breakfast. And when the pandemic is over, we'll be doing that again, the monthly breakfasts. Amina has joined us in one of our Sunday Bible classes. And we would welcome anyone who is interested in learning more about our community or the Christianity to pop into some of ours. So we just want to build a stronger community.
That's a great cause. We should all work on it. And I hope we can do something with Adam Center. Remember, there is some emails between you and forgot his name.
Yeah, I remember. I had the notes on that. The pandemic got in the way of that. We'll get back to that. We will do it.
Sure. Hopefully soon. I don't know when, but hopefully
Yes.
soon. We are sick of this pandemic. We ask Allah to subhanahu wa ta'ala to help to make it easy on everybody and make this time over soon, the time of pandemic. Hopefully with the vaccine and maybe with the weather changing or something. But yeah. Any other comment or anything? It's 1:40, so I guess that was about 1 hour and 40 minutes.
This is more than the Dr. Anushi would give us, right? Just kidding. I just meant to share one or couple of paragraphs, if that is possible. It's
Of course.
from Al-Fatawa Al-Kubra, and it's from Sheikh Mitwalli Al-Sha'rawi. And I really want to make sure that my brother Ayman is happy, and I'm not arguing, and the Quran not arguing anything with what brother Ayman is saying about us educating ourselves, going for it. So in the topic here is عطاء القرآن المتجدد. Quran is renewing, and it's always giving us new information. And the question was, بعض الناس يتساءل عن معنى العطاء المتجدد للقرآن وهل الله سبحانه وتعالى عنده زمن. Is there any limits for the Quran and whatever God gave us from the Quran? بحيث يقسم الأشياء حسب الزمن. There is nothing, it's like, is there any division by time? And if you, I just want you to, it's like, I want us to notice that there is lots of things of the Quran, the way it's using the verbs and the objectives. This is where it's important to know the grammar and the Arabic language very well, and I like that a lot. And the other question, وبالتالي فما معنى عطاء لكل جيل? And it's like, and the answers, إننا نقول لهؤلاء جميعا إن الله سبحانه وتعالى لا زمن عنده ولا تحده حدود ولا قيود. There is no limits and there is no timing, and there is no limits for what you can find from the Quran or what the Quran can give. ولكن القرآن كتاب منزل من عند الله. It was sent from God. The Quran is sent from God. ولذلك فهو يخاطب الناس بقدر عقولهم. And it talks to people, or people gain from it based on what their knowledge base is. يعطيهم بالقدر الذي يفهمونه ببشريتهم. Based on like their knowledge, their education, the time, and with the development, new things can happen. So we can learn from whatever we can observe ourselves and based on our knowledge. والقوانين التي وضعها الله سبحانه وتعالى والأسباب في الأرض. And we can learn from whatever exists in our nature, from things that God put for us to learn from. والقرآن الكريم له عطاء متجدد. It renews, there is renewal in the Quran all the time. وهذا العطاء المتجدد هو استمرار لمعنى إعجاز القرآن. This is the miracle of the Quran, that it's always renewed. ولو فرغ القرآن عطاءه كله أو إعجازه كله في عدد من السنوات, and if there was limits in time or years, أو في القرن أو الزمان, لاستقبل القرون الأخرى دون إعجاز أو إعطاء. So if there was no miracles in the Quran, the Quran would have been translated or interpreted by the different scholars who interpreted the Quran. So, and one of the scholars is Mitwalli Al-Sha'rawi, who said if the only one who could have interpreted the Quran correctly is Prophet Muhammad. But this is one of the miracles of the Quran, and that's why he was saying about the way that he was interpreting, the way that he was reading the Quran and teaching it. Sheikh Al-Sha'rawi was teaching it based on like his knowledge, and that's what it's like. He never called it a tafsir. وبذلك يكون قد جمد. The Quran, if it was translated, it would have been freed. والقرآن لا يجمد أبدا, and it's not freezed at all. وإنما يعطي لكل جيل بقدر طاقته, and it gives to every generation based on its power in its knowledge and whatever they can do and whatever they can absorb. ولكل الفرد بقدر فهمه ويعطي للجيل القادم شيئا جديدا لم يعطيه للجيل الذي سبقه. And every time it will renew itself and it will give the newer generation things that, and based on like the technology and the development and all of this, in newer things that the older generation didn't have. So with that, I like just to finish this. Thank you.
Great. I mean, subhanAllah, everybody can look at the Quran and benefit and come up with different lesson learned. I mean, if you see like Malik ibn Nabi, he was, I think he passed in the 70s. He wrote about Al-Quran, al-Dhahra al-Qur'aniyya, the Quran phenomenon or Quranic phenomenon. Also, he wrote about civilization and how to bring people up to civilization. So different, like Imam Sharawi, of course, I used to enjoy his classes when I was back home when he was alive, because I think he passed in the late 90s or 2000. I'm not sure, but yeah, he was a big scholar. He has a lot of knowledge in Arabic and on tafsir. I mean, it was very enjoyable. So, I mean, every scholar can look at it. I mean, if it depends on your background, you can look at from economy or from language or from theology. So, of course, I mean, what you said, I mean, we cannot argue about that. That's correct. I totally agree. Sheikh Ismail,
inshallah. I have to go. I have classes. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, everybody, and may Allah reward you for this time. And inshallah, we'll meet next Sunday.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakum Allah khair.
Alaikum
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.